Welcome back to JB Reviews. I have a 2024 Chevy Silverado and a 2023 Ford F350, and they both have their new generations of diesel engines. 6.7 liter high output Powerstroke and the 6.6 liter Duramax diesel. Now in this video, we are going to be doing a drive. This is my first time driving a high output Powerstroke in a single rear wheel. And we're going to see MPG, acceleration, all that good stuff. Special shout out to Larry H. Miller, Super Ford here in Salt Lake City. This truck is available. Ask for Brian. He actually had a customer back out and buy another Super Duty. And I also have Jerry Seiner Chevrolet here. This truck is available as well, and this is a really nice spec too. Let's go ahead and drive the Ford first. So driving the Ford F350 trimmer, I know a lot of people are going to probably say in the comment section, this is not fair, you know, I should have had like a Lariat without the trimmer package or whatever. It doesn't really matter. This test is really all about diesel performance, and I know that the tires are a little aggressive, but hey, that Chevy has all-terrain tires on it, so there's probably about 34s, maybe 33, 34, somewhere in there. But yeah, I think that this is a fair enough test because we're doing mostly highway driving, a little bit of stop and go here and there, but I do like Ford seats. I've said it in the past, the truck has the lumbar support. These seats are nice and wide for those big butt people out there. And the dirt tracks aren't that loud, surprisingly. I'm doing about 60 miles an hour, and it feels good. I mean, this being an XLT, push button start, you have a full digital cluster, which you'll see here in a second. You have a large screen on the side, and I believe this truck has for the diesel, I believe it's a 355. But yeah, I'll let you guys know here if I say it wrong. But even at 70 miles an hour, the truck feels nice and straight, very comfortable. You do have a power seat on this side. I think that Ford's doing something right here, guys. I really do. Running at about 65 miles an hour, we're probably like right around 1500 RPMs. And if you get up to 70, we're probably just over 75. Yeah, we're still pretty low. Wow, probably like 1700 maybe. Oh wow, this does have lane keep assist too. I can see it, or I can feel it, I should say, turning the steering wheel. But yeah, even at like 75, I'm gonna accelerate a little bit. It doesn't need much to accelerate, so it kind of hangs out in that 10th gear. So this truck has a ton of power. I can't wait to drive a 430 rear end F450 because that's gonna be the true test. It probably doesn't downshift at all. But very comfortable ride and pickup. You know, nothing's changed really with the mirrors, so this is pretty much essentially the same cab as you've seen in the past. And one of my favorite things about Ford trucks, they show you exactly what gear you're in. Man, when we drive that Chevy, you're not gonna have that function. They really need to add that soon. So here are the numbers for the Ford. 12,000 pound gross fuel weight rating, and the rear gross axle weight rating is gonna be 7,050, which shows this truck has a pretty high payload capacity of 4,086 pounds. And then here is how much it weighs on the curb. Wow. 62, 63. Whoa. That is quiet. I did turn the AC down a little bit too. 65 on the window. We're going about 60 miles an hour. And 61, 62 out back. So pretty quiet. We're pretty much at the midway here. I'll go ahead and call off where we are for the fuel economy here in a second though. We just got off 15.2 MPG. We've only driven 5.5 miles. That ain't bad though for a off-road HD, or as Ford calls it, Super Duty. That ain't bad. That is not bad at all. So high output Powerstroke does give you some great updates to the engine. They lowered compression, all that good stuff. And it should run cooler because of some of the enhancements, like with the combustion, and they have a water jacket on the turbo. And it uses like coolant to keep that sucker chilled. But yeah, I'll check back here in a second as we get close back to the dealership, and I'll show you guys where we end off at. We're jumping back on the interstate now. Steering feels nice and tight too. Now this does have an eco mode. I always put it in the eco mode for like the last leg of the trip here, or at some point on the trip. I don't use it though for the 0 to 60. But it does change the gauge cluster a little bit. It looks a little bit greener. And like I said, this truck is surprisingly quiet for a off-roader. 35-inch tires. And I think that taller tires ride better too, especially if you air them down. Woo, it rides so good. But yeah, the steering feels really nice. Oh, someone just pulled out. Let me just slow down a little bit. Brakes don't feel as touchy. Let me try it one more time. Brakes actually feel better in this truck. Interesting. I don't know if I told you guys, it's about 100 degrees today too. You can really feel it. But we're about to be back to the dealership. I'll let you guys know where we end off for the fuel economy, but we're doing pretty darn good. So the high output Powerstroke is the most powerful diesel in this segment. And 500 horsepower, 1,200 pound-feet of torque needs a lot of cooling. And this truck definitely has it for the turbo, for the combustion. And let's see how it does with a 0 to 60. Here we go.
$30, $60,
we're pulling back in right now. That's where we are so far. And we'll stop next to some of these expeditions here. So 15.3, 13 minutes and 21 seconds driven, and then 11.9 miles driven. So let's go ahead and get that Chevy and see how it does. So now we're driving the Chevy Silverado, and the Ford was actually pretty comfortable, I gotta admit. Ford trucks, even with the solid front axles, drive extremely well. That being said, Chevy having an independent front suspension, you can tell this truck's a little bit more mannered up front. Like when you hit bumps, it just doesn't swell up in your body as much. But the power delivery seems cleaner with the Duramax. After driving that Powerstroke, I gotta admit it, the torque, it's like always there. Like when you push it a little bit, it has power everywhere. I mean, running at about 70 miles an hour, steering feels not as tight as the Ford, but it feels good enough to make you feel confident. Steering wheel is a little bit smaller, I can tell for sure. That's the first thing I noticed when I got in this truck, is how much smaller the steering wheel is. Now let me go ahead and show you guys some of the RPMs over here. Now if you're running at about 65 miles an hour, you are looking to be around what, 1400 RPMs? 14, 15? It's close to 1500. Looks about 1400. I do feel like the Ford feels stronger. Like I feel like I really have to push it a little bit more so, but that torque is like always there, but you just have to press it in more. At about 75 miles an hour, we're just over 1500 RPMs. Yeah, this is definitely a well-tuned diesel. I even like the suspension too. Like, even though I'm not a huge fan of the IFS, I feel as though it's extremely comfortable. Like, I think that's where Chevy wins every time. You don't hear the Duramax as much either with this truck. If I turn down the AC a little bit, yeah, it's definitely a little bit quieter in here. Let me go ahead and get the decibel reader so we can see just how quiet it is. Yeah, this was 61. I'm just going too slow for these tests. I have to stay back around 70, 75 when I do these. Yeah, 63, 64. I'm going 62 miles an hour, by the way. 59 back there. So yeah, this is just too slow of a speed. So about 60 miles an hour. I'm at about 60 right now. It's really quiet in here. And like I said, you can't really hear the diesel in this truck. It's really quiet. So here are the numbers on the door. GVWR is 12.1 and the rear gross ax weight rating is going to be 7250. And then payload is 3925. So the truck has a curb weight of 8,175 pounds. We're jumping off the interstate right now. And here's where we are. I don't remember where we were with the Ford, but it was probably somewhere in this area. And then I did reset this so you guys can see the time. So we're gonna go back the opposite direction and I'll let you guys know pretty much where we end off when we get back to the dealership. Unlike the Ford, Chevy does not have a eco mode. They just have normal and off-road. That's pretty much it. Ford has quite a few different drive modes, especially for the trimmer. With that being said, I think that the Duramax has gotten more fuel efficient because I own one for 2024. And I really do like the power delivery. Like, I can tell the difference between the Gen 1 L5P and the Gen 2. Like, they did a great job for some of the enhancements that they made. And you know, even though these are both heavy-duty trucks, 1 tons, they both have great on-road manners. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you were to drive a half ton after driving one of these, you would notice the difference. But it's not to the point where you feel like really uncomfortable. And the only thing missing from both of these trims is ventilated seats, because like I said earlier, it is really hot outside. I think it's, the Ford said 95, this truck is saying 97, so it's pretty hot. But we're gonna make our way back to the dealership, and I forgot to do something in this video with the Ford, but if I have a chance, I will do another video separate from this one for the exhaust brake. So on this truck, we turned the exhaust brake on. Actually, it's working right now. It's very intermittent though in the GMs, but I'll do a separate video for the Ford to see if they made any improvements, because I turned it on at the very last minute, so I didn't really get a chance to really feel much of a difference there. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Now make no mistake, this Gen 2 L5P is pretty dang good. And I've actually done other testing against the high output Powerstroke, showing that this truck actually has pretty good acceleration. 975 pound-feet of torque is nothing to laugh at. And 470 horsepower ain't too far behind the Ford. 10-speed Allison, let's see how it does. Here we go. $30. 60. This is pretty impressive. Pretty impressive here. Just gotta pull up next to these Expeditions and we're pretty much done. So here we are. 17.4, 12 miles driven. And then here is the time. So this is my second time doing a 0 to 60 run with the high output Powerstroke, and this is actually the second time a Chevy beat it with the new Gen 2 L5P. Now I know a lot of people in the comment section are going to say that 0 to 60 doesn't matter, and that's true to an extent with these trucks, because these trucks are not tuned for that type of performance, but it's still fun to see. But the Chevy pretty much cleaned up today. MPG, acceleration unloaded. I mean, it's really good, guys. I think that the Gen 2 L5P is on to something. And yeah, I wish I can get a trailer hooked up to these trucks, but unfortunately, you know, I can't ask a dealership to do that because these are brand new pickups, and yeah, you need at least 500 miles on them. So we'll see what happens. Hope you guys liked the video. Special shout out to Jerry Seiner, Chevrolet here in Salt Lake City, and Larry H. Miller, Super Ford here in Salt Lake City. As I mentioned, both of these trucks are available for sale. This truck actually just became available, so if you haven't seen my last post, I did show that this truck was going to become available. So here's really quickly the MSRP, $82,885, and you guys have pretty much seen around the truck. So be sure to reach out to Brian. This is actually a truck that he spec'd out for a customer. See you guys soon.